Greetings, I'm Professor Seth Frey, and welcome to the demo for Module 4. So we're going to be talking about privacy in the context of your own browsing privacy, but privacy is a much larger subject on the internet. You've heard that there's all these invasive companies you trust, actually, making their entire living getting all their income off of data about you, monetizing it, selling it to people you have no idea even who. That's a couple levels away from our daily experience on the internet, from our experience in our browser interacting with friends. It can be intangible, and we can sort of we don't always know what that means. So today I'm going to give you a more concrete sense of what it really means that your privacy is threatened, and sort of to what extent you're being tracked on the internet and turned into a product on the internet merely by living your life on the internet. To do that, we're going to use the data from a tool called Privacy Badger. A few weeks ago, you went through the instructions to install it on your browser. It's a special tool, so it sounds kind of creepy. It tracks all of your browsing history. It watches every site you go to. Most importantly, it watches the sites that are watching what sites you go to. So there's the sites you go to. Then there's the sites watching that. Those are the trackers that we're going to be kind of tracking. And then there's Privacy Badger, which watches the watchers. And what's special about that tool, it's not invasive because it's not making any money off of your data or data about who's watching your data. It's not phoning home. It was developed by privacy activists at a foundation, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's a trustworthy tool that was developed to make people more aware of privacy invasions. We're using it because it's supported on lots of platforms and browsers, and because all the data is exportable so that you, the user, the victim of all this tracking, can go through manually yourself and sort of see what's going on. So we're going to export that data, and I've written a couple functions for you that are going to crunch all that data down to two variables that we'll be able to explore and look into and learn about our own patterns. Now, if you don't have that data, or if you didn't install it long enough ago that you didn't build up a kind of good history, or if for whatever reason you didn't want to install Privacy Badger, I've provided a sample output file that you'll be able to use. And that sample file is going to be the basis of this lesson. Our sort of big question, big motivating question for this lesson is going to be, what's bigger? The number of sites you watch, or that you've watched maybe in that period in the past couple of weeks, or the number of sites watching you? So, going along with that, we're going to start by running our boilerplate code and downloading or getting handy our JSON file. So I'm going to click that. It downloads, and here we are. So we've got it right there. Now you've been through this process before. We're going to run the code that produces this little upload box. That's going to enable us to select the file that we're going to be analyzing. I'm analyzing the sample. You can analyze your own data. And having gotten, let's say, upload parentheses 1, we can now run this code, which is going to which is going to generate the two variables I'm talking about that we'll be able to explore, that'll provide a reduced representation of your browsing history. Specifically, we're going to have two variables, visited sites and tracker sites. I'll explain what those are. Now, all this code, maybe it looks scary because you don't understand all of it. There's a lot commented out. You're trusting me on boilerplate and on authentication, that you can run the code and you don't have to understand everything it does, that it's setting us up to be able to dive in. So, what is visited sites and what is tracker sites? Visited sites is going to be a Python list of all the sites you went to in that 3-week period. You'll be able to, if we print it out, we're going to get a list of sites. Now, it's in an order. How am I using order? I'll get to that. First thing we're going to see is there's a lot of them are capitalized and some of them are not capitalized. What does that mean? Capitalized sites are going to be ones that have are invasive in the sense that they use invasive trackers. They use trackers that are not just watching you on a site and watching everything you do on a site. They're watching you on multiple sites. There's one tracker on Google and Wired and Amazon that's actually trying to correlate your behavior across those platforms. So it's capitalized if it uses invasive trackers. And look, almost all the top ones are. And then the more we scroll down, the more lowercase it gets. So then we get into the question of what does order mean? Order is going to be the extent to which a visited site uses invasive trackers. The number of invasive trackers it uses. So Wired and SourceForge and Amazon are going to be some of the most invasive sites I've used. Assuming this is my data. And uscourts.gov, Zara, UGA.edu, OSU, FSU, UNH, all these academic sites, these are going to be some of the least invasive sites, even though they do use some invasive trackers. You can tell by the capitalized. If they're lowercase, they use no invasive trackers. Okay, and that's a lot of sites. There's a whole bunch of sites visited. That's a big number. So if the number of sites tracking us is bigger, that means it's going to be an even longer list. All right, so what do we have here? Now we're going to print out the tracker sites. So going through visited sites, you're going to see a lot of familiar websites. These are websites you went to. Printing out tracker sites is going to be a different story. You're going to see a lot of sites you've never really heard of. What are these things? What's Everest Tech? What's GWallet? What's ImpactAd.jp? What's PXI.pub? PYMX5.com, QQ.com. Well, like what are these things? They are trackers. These are sites that exist kind of under the hood of the internet. The reason you've never heard of them is because they don't interact with you. They interact with sites that want to make money off of you. So they sell their. So the people who run these sites have heard of them. There are some exceptions. You've heard of the BBC. So many companies use their own trackers. And the ones of these you have heard of are ones that are rolling their own trackers, like Google, like Amazon. And again, we've got lowercase and uppercase. The uppercase are all on top. These sites are ordered. The tracker sites list is ordered by the number of visited sites that they're correlating your behavior across. So gstatic, that's Google, that's google.com, was correlating my behavior across the biggest number of sites. They had the biggest view of my behavior across sites. Same with Instagram, Flickr, Microsoft, Qualtrics, and Reddit. These were the most invasive in terms of watching me in the most places. Now at the bottom it goes all lowercase. These are the ones watching me on the fewest sites. We're going to define an invasive tracker as, we're going to say a tracker is uninvasive. It still may be weird to track you, but it's actually helpful to track you. If I'm just watching your behavior on one site, that's exactly how we keep a shopping cart. You've bought stuff online, you have a shopping cart, you've refreshed the page, and your shopping cart's still there. That's because there's a tracker. It's a non-invasive tracker, and if it's just watching you on that site, if it's just watching you on one or maybe two sites, we're going to call it non-invasive. If it's watching you on 3 or more sites, we're going to call it invasive. So all the lowercase sites are the names of non-invasive trackers, and then from here on up, we get sites that are watching you on 3 or more places that you visited, and these become invasive. Okay, so having built these two lists, the list of sites you visited, and the sites you watched, and the list of sites watching you, we can put it together. This explains this. So Wired.com is the most invasive visited site. We can look for sites that we visit to find out if they're invasive or not. We can ask if reddit.com is invasive or not by looking for its lowercase version, looking for its uppercase version. Whichever one comes out, true. The second one was true, which means Reddit was invasive. It showed up in uppercase, which means it got marked as invasive. Now we get to we can use list operations, slicing, to ask what 20 sites have the most trackers. What 20 sites have the fewest trackers? This is minus 20, so we're picking the 20th from last address in the list, the 20th from last index in the list, and then slicing to the end of the list. These will give us the bottom sites. And again, once again, it's a lot of EDUs. And now we get to, let's see, what tracker tracks the most sites that you visit. So this is, again, I think this was G-static. This is the one correlating your behavior across the most places. We can take the top 20 sites, the top 20 trackers, G-static still at the top, and then we've got all the ones below that. These are the first 20 entries in the list. With list operations, we're able to explore this data and understand it, because the order has meaning, we're going from most to least invasive. We can use list operations in a meaningful way to give us meaningful information. The things at the front of the list are more invasive. Things at the back of the list are slices at the end of the list give us less invasive sites. And finally, now we get to answer our motivating question. What's bigger, the number of sites I watch or the number of sites watching me? So the length of visited sites. I visited in the time of data collection 718. Now, is that a big number or a small number? Does that mean something about how much I use the internet? Possibly, but more likely it reflects how long I had the plugin installed. The sooner you did the assignment, the more data you collected on yourself, the bigger this number will be. So here's our question. Is tracker sites longer than visited sites? And if so, how much bigger? 843. Okay, so more sites watched me than I watched. For every action I did on the internet, there was more than for every little bit of effort I put in the internet, there was someone out there putting more effort, or there was some number of there was more than me worth of people putting that same amount of effort in understanding me. So the apparatus of the industry of the internet is more invested in you than you are in it, is our little takeaway. We can do the math. This is actually a low ratio. I've seen some people with 3 to 1. 3 trackers watching them for every site they watch. Mine's closer to 1.17. So 1.17 sites are watching me for every site I watch, or 17% more sites watch me than I watch. All right, so what we were able to do is using some boilerplate code I wrote, I generated 2 lists that had their own internal semantics. They went from more invasive to least invasive. They used capitalization to single out more or less invasive activity. We were able to use slicing and indexing to teach us about our own browsing habits and to introspect and learn about our relationship to the internet and to gain a deeper understanding of what it means to have or not have privacy on the internet. I hope you got a lot out of that, and thank you very much.